Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Pre-Race. Joe here, along with Isha from Racing with Isha and Julia. Got a lot to talk about with MotoGP, INDYCAR, NASCAR. And before we start off, a big thank you to our newest Patreon subscriber, Matthew. Thank you so much for investing in the Grid Network. Each and every month, we'll read your name on the air. And of course, a big thank you is coming to you in the mail. Encourage everybody to invest in the Grid Network. Colin, Shell, Mark, Rob, and David all have been investing in us, and I'm very excited to add Matthew to that. And of course, buy me a coffee or the YouTube Super Chat. There you can buy a cup of coffee for a particular member of the Grid Network team right here, and we'll forward it to that member. Now, Isha will be back for IndyCars. Julia, MotoGP, and we saw a very exciting sprint race in the Misano World Circuit. Marco Simoncelli sprint race. Jorge Martin led from start to finish. Mark Bezzecchi took second place. We know he's riding injured, and so is Pecco Bagnaia, who held on to third place somehow. Pecco holding off Danny Pedrosa and Brad Binder. The two KTMs were just right there. I thought they were going to get them at the end. At the end, Pecco was able to hold off. So we saw, again, all three Ducatis up towards the front. Any concern? Because this was only a 13-lap sprint race. Now we do 27 laps tomorrow. Any concern for Pecco and Bezzecchi in the race tomorrow, and if they could hold with all their injuries?
Yeah, maybe not so many concern about Marco Bezzecchi like about Pecco Bagnaia. Because we think we've seen Marco Bezzecchi holding on a little bit better than Pecco Bagnaia. He looked more comfortable. And also there is a different, the scale of the injury and the scale of the incident that happened that took Marco Bezzecchi and Pecco Bagnaia. Because we need to say that it's a true miracle that Pecco Bagnaia doesn't have any broken bones after what happened in Barcelona. Because I've seen plenty of incidents like that across many sports, not MotoGP, maybe even, but World Superbike, Speedway racing, and other. And it always resulted in some broken bones, crushed joints. And here's Pecco Bagnaia being ridden over on his legs, and he's walking, he can ride, he doesn't have any broken bones, just a miracle itself. And the fact that he's riding a bike this weekend is really a miracle. But yeah, it's gonna be hard for him to maybe last this full race distance tomorrow, because we've seen him in so much pain after today's sprint. He looked like he was really struggling to walk off his bike and just generally walk to his team. It's getting a great amount of pain. But considering how Bagnaia is really focused on his championship, how much he wants it, and probably one of the reasons he's even there in Misano is because he wants to hold on to that gap he has in the championship standings, especially that we've seen that his presence and him being third, which is amazing, is really important considering that second in the championship is Jorge Martin, who's the fastest rider the whole weekend, not only on one lap, as we've seen in qualifying and practices, but he's also the fastest in fighting on the track because he's the winner of the sprint and he's the favorite to win tomorrow. So I think we have to see how it's gonna go. For sure, but yeah, probably is gonna start a race tomorrow. And it's all probably gonna depend on his own decision if he's holding on until the end, or if in a really bad situation he's gonna just go to the back to the pits in the middle of the race. But we also have to say that there are riders that says that sometimes the extent of their injury, and it's easier with this injury to ride on a bike than walk. So it's hard to say if it's for Bagnaia, maybe just harder to walk than, for example, ride, even though it's his leg, which is hard. But me saying that, I just could a Polish speedway rider who broke his leg on a track. Mostly someone drove into him and broke his leg, and 3 weeks later he was back on the bike, saying that he feels more comfortable and he has less pain riding on the bike and racing than walking. So these guys are gladiators in a totally different breed.
Very different breed. When you're easier riding a bike compared to walking on the leg, that is something else. And of course, all of them, they want to go out there, get the win, Jorge Martin wants to sweep the weekend again. Pole, sprint win, and he's hopeful for the Grand Prix, of course. He made it look easy today, Julia. Just looked untouchable. And overall, the KTMs, they were putting pressure on Pecco Bagnaia. They were up there. Jack Miller wasn't exactly doing that great this weekend. But at the end, we saw KTMs, they're fast. Aprilia, both riders in the top 10 with Vinales in sixth place. But still, five Ducatis in the top 10. Do you think Ducati has it, or do you think KTM and Aprilia could have a shot at that top step on the podium?
I mean, I do think that Aprilia and KTM, of course, may have a shot at the podium because it's definitely always possible. But Ducati is definitely in better position to get that, especially Jorge Martin, who, as I said, is the fastest rider this weekend, definitely. Pecco Bagnaia and Marco Bezzecchi are super fans despite their injuries. But of course, we have to give a shout out to KTM especially, and saying that they do have a shot because today it was sprint, so shorter race, and we had Dani Pedrosa, which is whole another thing that it was Dani Pedrosa, being on the rear wheel of Pecco Bagnaia for the whole sprint distance, trying to find a way to overtake him and being really close to do so. And then also Brad Binder catching up on them. So tomorrow, considering that we have a longer race, we have a normal race distance, then there is a big chance if the race gonna play out like today's sprint, that the KTMs have bigger shot at overtaking, for example, Pecco Bagnaia, who we must remember is, I think right now, from the top riders who are the fastest, the most severely injured one.
Well, severely injured one. Pecco not exactly at 100%. And you bring up Dani Pedrosa. What a performance. I mean, can you describe just how surprising it is? Because I've seen sometimes we get like in NASCAR driver, been away for 3, maybe 4 years, do one race or two, and they have a good run. But what he's doing, not just this weekend, but the past weekends in the KTM, is phenomenal. Can you describe just what he's doing and everything? Because it's just amazing to me.
Yeah, to me as well, because I think every one of us like a little fan has a little fan heart for this sport, and we're thinking that we all, I think, considering how many years Dani Pedrosa have been racing, we all been growing up on Dani Pedrosa racing and winning and being in that top spot, especially with Marc Marquez in Honda. And it was, it was like a big comeback to the past. And I do think that every one of us had a little faith that maybe he's gonna overtake Pecco Bagnaia and he's gonna be on the podium, because honestly, seeing that the quintessence of everything he'd done in the last year for KTM, the last years, after he was at Honda, he left, and then KTM got him as a development rider. And what he could do in his last wildcard appearances, because whenever he was, especially in Jerez, when he was there on the track with a wild card, it got us wondering if he's gonna win a race even for some point, because he was the fastest in Jerez La Frontera. We were wondering if he's gonna win a race, and when for the last time, if it was not Dani Pedrosa in those rounds, we were wondering if the wild card, not on Ducati, is gonna get a win. So I do think that, considering that Dani Pedrosa had finished his career in the last race of 2018, because then he was replaced in 2019 by Jorge Lorenzo in Honda, and that was the end of his career. Like, we could say that from 2019 he hadn't been racing competitively. He was only having this wildcard appearances, then after moving to KTM to be the development driver. So it's like KTM really owes their success, their wins, and their competition to Dani Pedrosa. And then Dani Pedrosa still proves that he's incredibly fast after not being in the paddock regularly and racing like the other guys for 4 years. And he's faster than Aprilia, he's faster than Alex Espargaro, Maverick Vinales, Fabio Quartararo, of course, of course, thinking about Honda's and Yamaha's performance, but I mostly could see that Aprilia and the rest of the Ducati guys. So what Dani Pedrosa is doing is absolutely astonishing. Like, I would say, someone get this man even his own team, his own permanent deal, because he definitely deserved that, and he would be one of the contenders for World Championship, maybe, judging from his wild card appearances. But yeah, it's absolutely astonishing, and there is the fact that he has a shot at tomorrow's podium, definitely.
A shot at the podium tomorrow, that'd be huge. Just amazing what he has been doing in that KTM, and 20th in points considering he just does this wild card race weekend. That's just amazing. Now, of course, Julie, this is going to be the last race in Europe until the season finale at Valencia. Then it's off to Asia, the Pacific region, then the Middle East and Qatar for the next 7 races. Overall, what challenges does this present to the teams and the riders where from September all the way through November, they're going to be traveling around this region?
Well, definitely, it's gonna be a tough period for them. Like, talking about logistic stuff, that they have to move everything, they have to be, they have to be flying everything from country to country really fast, and sometimes it's gonna be different part of Asia. But the other thing is that this is the first season with the sprints, and it's already taken a toll on many riders, because from the beginning of the season, from the FP1, and then technically from FP2 in the first round of the season, we didn't have a full contracted grid, because there's always an injured rider who needs to be replaced by someone, or we had a missing spot on the grid because someone was injured. So we didn't have any all the contracted riders on the grid, never this season during the race. And then we are going to Asia, when it's always been taking a toll on riders, like, all the food crumbs and other stuff. But it's also different weather, different conditions. These races are always hard. And now we have twice as much racing, because we have sprint and then we have a normal race distance race. In those conditions, it may be hot, it may be extremely humid, so it's hard to say. Definitely it's gonna be a big challenge for the teams and for the riders, and also considering new tracks like India. This is something also incredibly different. So I think it's gonna be really interesting for us, but it may take a big toll on the riders and on the teams.
Take a team, the riders, different regions, almost different weeks. It's going to be something else. And as you mentioned, the humidity, the weather, we've seen some of these tracks just catch riders by surprise. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens. Now, one of those riders that had an unpleasant surprise last year with a big off was Marc Marquez. He finished 10th in today's sprint race, has scored points in the last 2 Grand Prix with a 12th and 13th, but he's the only Honda rider today that was anywhere near the front at 10th place. The remaining Honda riders were 21st to 23rd, just back at the pack, unable to make it work. And next year we know Johan Zarco, he's going to LCR. Mir, Marquez, they're going to be back with the factory team. Could we anticipate something drastically done by Honda? And by chance, are they already starting to work on the 2024 program? Because it seems like 2023 might be a lost cause.
No, I don't think so, because we also had a period when they already started working on the next season, because they decided that this season is already lost, and it did nothing. And it looks like Honda just doesn't know what to do anymore, especially that it looks like they're letting Marc Marquez go, and the atmosphere in Marc Marquez's box is not the same. He's almost not talking to the Japanese part of crew, which is the most important part of crew, and he was always talking to them. They're always discussing the technical stuff. And it looks like Marc Marquez is leaving. John Mir doesn't want to be there. Alex Rins is leaving. So, to be honest, I see a big tragedy coming in for Honda, because it looks really bad for them. And maybe it's gonna be better next year, because they are for sure working on their bikes for the next year. But I can't see it being a drastic difference between what we see now and what we're gonna see next season, especially that, to be honest, we are pretty sure that Marc Marquez will be leaving the team and will be taking his main sponsors with him. Probably, and it's gonna say that he's gonna go to Grassini, which is another really crazy rumor. And he's gonna go to Grassini to his brother. There's even another rumor that he's kind of doing a roasty thing and he's buying the team, which is just another thing, and that he's taking his three main sponsors anywhere he goes with him. So these three main sponsors are Repsol, so title sponsor of the team, Red Bull, and Estrella Galicia. So the three biggest concern in Spain, going always after Marc Marquez, and many Spanish riders and Spanish driver in F1 like Carlos Sainz. He's also sponsored by Estrella Galicia and by Red Bull. So this is a really big thing for Honda because they're losing an 8-time world champion, an absolute legend. They're losing big knowledge on a bike that only he has, and this is the bike only he can ride because, as you said, he's the only Honda rider that is there, and for example, competes in Q2 at least sometimes. He tries to, and he rides really hard, and he's taking big part of their money.
Definitely, that's going to be really interesting to follow the silly season around Marc Marquez. We'll definitely be following that. I encourage everyone to be sure to follow Julia, including her new YouTube channel. Link in the video description as well. And thank you so much, Julia, always. But before we go, I know Isha has one question for all of us.
Yeah, Julia, before you go, we just want to ask you, who is your pick a winner for MotoGP?
I do think, as I said, that the clear favorite for tomorrow will be Jorge Martin because he's the fastest riders now. So I'll be going for Jorge Martin.
I'll be going with Jorge Martin too, but there's a side of me that wish I could go with Danny Pedrosa. That'll be huge if he gets the win, but I gotta go with Jorge as well. And thank you so much, as always, Julia.
Yep, thank you, Julia. And now we'll be switching gears and taking a look at IndyCar. So the last race of the year for the NTT INDYCAR Series is at Laguna Seca. The Firestone Grand Prix of Monterrey saw Colton Herta fastest in yesterday's practice. Pedro Award was second fastest, and he was trying to overtake Joseph Newgarden, who was in 20th place. Scott McLaughlin was 16th fastest yesterday, and the next practice session is less than an hour away. So, Joe, are you surprised by the results we saw yesterday? And do you think this is solely because of the repaving of Laguna Seca?
I was a little bit surprised. The repaving of Laguna Seca, I think, is going to play a factor because we know there's a little bit more grip depending on what tires you're using. The soft, a lot more grip. The hard, there's going to be some more grip. Brand new pavement. Once it gets worn out, that's going to change. But that's not going to happen during this race weekend. So I think what's going to happen is you're going to see drivers, they're going to be pushing to the limits, trying to get the maximum grip possible. And at times when they overstep, that's when you're going to see things occur. Roman Grosjean going off the track big yesterday. Very unfortunate for him. We saw even Scott McLaughlin go for a spin outside of the turn one area. Overall, I think this has a lot of potential to be a very entertaining race because at the end of the day, when you have this new pavement, this new level of grip, I think it could really bring out a lot of potential from the driver's aspect of what they could do with the car. In the past, it was very technical. You need to have a car that could really grab hold of the track grip, especially in the corkscrew area. Now that it's been a little bit neutralized, I think a lot more of the drivers are going to be trying to show what they could do with this new, essentially, level playing field with the grip level.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're going to be in for some surprises this weekend. And, since IndyCar returned to Laguna Seca, Colton has won twice from the pole position, and Alex Palou came up from 11th last year. So each race only had one full course caution and between 4 to 7 lead changes. And when you compare the stats from when CART raced at Laguna Seca, out of the 22 races, only 2 times did the winner not come from the top 3 positions. And only one has come back from lower than 11th to win, and that was Max Papis in 2001, and he came back from 25th place. So, Joe, why does this track favor those up front, and can the repave be a wild card to produce a surprise winner?
I think the wild card could be the paved track that we've seen this year with the new repaving. The big thing I'm looking at, though, is the importance of qualifying. You got to be up towards the front. When Max Pappas won that race, he had essentially 8 caution flags that occur in that race, allowing him time to work his way to the front. As you had mentioned, the last couple of races here, about 1 caution flag in each race. When you look at this race with the grip level, we could see, I think, a more chaotic first lap. You're going to have drivers going into that first corner, 2, if they're really feeling aggressive, 3 wide. And especially if we have some of the names that we saw in the front of practice 1 up towards the front of the race. Drivers like Tom Bloomquist, Yuri Vips, drivers that are not exactly up front all the time. In fact, for Yuri, this will only be his second start. More room for mistake. Experienced driver trying to take advantage of their being new, not used to being up front. That could be a potential for a mistake too. Overall, I do think you have to be in the top 10 to get a win. So qualifying is going to be very important. But if we're going to this race and we're 20 laps in and we have 2 cautions, I'll be thinking, okay, let's change up our strategy, because if we're seeing cautions for drivers going off the course, causing crashes, then I'll be thinking we might have a shot. What can we do to change our strategy to get a win?
Definitely. And, if we focus more on yesterday's practice, we did see some surprises as well. We saw Yuri Vips finish 6th fastest, and Rinus VK was 10th, and Tom Bloomqvist was 11th. So, do you think that any of these 3 could start in the top 10 on Sunday?
Potentially. I think especially with Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan racing, that team is just looking really fast the last few weeks. Portland, that was Yuri Vips' first race, but this is a track where I feel he might feel a little bit more comfortable. A more technical track. You don't have exactly the kind of flat track what you see in Portland here, the elevation change, and especially the corkscrew. If you could have a good weekend where you're just fast all weekend and then qualify up towards the front, if you don't make mistakes, you'll stay up front. If you don't have a caution to go out and ruin your race strategy, you're going to be up towards the front still. Run a good, flawless race. It's getting harder to pass out there. The new grip level, I think it's going to be a bit of a challenge holding a driver off behind you if you're not fast enough. But overall, I think they got to feel pretty good about being up towards the front.
Yeah, and Joe, yesterday we saw that some silly news was finalized, and the least surprising of it was that Marcus Armstrong will be racing full time. And then we also heard that David Malukas is going over to McLaren, and this is a call that Alex Anderson from the Gay Racing Podcast did make earlier on. And this morning, we also saw that Chris DeHart tweeted that Caleb Lott will be returning to the number 77 again. Still, there are rumors that the team will potentially be joining forces with McLaren. And Joe, this leaves the following seats in question. We still have the 30 from Rahal Letterman. We know that Vips is auditioning for that seat, as well as the fact that Graham Rahal may not be running full time. And the 20 at Ed Carpenter Racing is also unknown. The 78 of Canapino, there are rumors of sponsorships being worked on. And then AJ Foyt, both drivers are not confirmed. But now there is a technical alliance with Penske. And then for the last bit of this, we have Dale Coyne Racing and a rumor that Grosjean is coming back. So what do you think is the next piece of the puzzle that we're waiting for in the silly season?
I think it's going to be Grosjean, and if he goes back to Dale Coyne Racing, one of the big things, if he goes back to Dale Coyne Racing, that will be a step going from essentially a team where you have the expectation to go out there, win races, contend for a championship, to you're here, let's try to get the best finish possible. If you could get a podium, they're over the moon excited. I think there'll be a lot less pressure on Grosjean, so I think that's more likely going to happen. It'll be really interesting then, because I think the next big seat people are going to be talking about will be AJ Foyt Racing, that new technical alliance with Penske. That's going to really be attractive to a lot of drivers where at first they probably thought, okay, this is a smaller team, less funded. Don't know if I really want to go there. Maybe try to go for Ed Carpenter Racing or Hunkos Hollinger Racing if things don't work out with Canapino. But now this occurs. So there's rumors of Devlin DeFrancesco being in the mix, maybe Stingray Rob. Stingray Rob's name have been thrown all over the place. Marshall Prue saying it looks like they got a bunch of sponsors aligned to help him for next year. I think the AJ Foyt Racing team will be a very coveted seat that a lot of people are going to be going after. Then Ed Carpenter Racing, I find very interesting where you got Ryan's VK, he'll be there. Teammate, we're not sure of. We know they got Josh Pearson in their driver development program with the idea of being there in 2025. So if you potentially have a driver coming in 2025, one of those two drivers, VK or whoever goes in there, may not be there next year unless they expand to a 3-car team. So that's going to really be, I think, it looks like a seat where, especially at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, where Ed Carpenter Racing is very fast. That looks desirable. Rest of the season, it hasn't been that great. The potential that you might be just sitting there for only 1 year, you'll be hoping to do something where you could really get the attention of other teams and move on to another team 2025. Or if Ed Carpenter Racing does have in the cars to expand to a 3-car team, then you'll feel good. But I think Coin Racing, Grosjean, once that piece falls, we'll look for what happens with AJ Foyt Racing, and then the rest will all fall in place.
Definitely, Joe. Thank you. And tomorrow we will recap the IndyCar race at Laguna Seca and discuss the season on Grid Live Wrap Up. And now let's pass it back over to Joe for the World Rally Championship.
World Rally Championship, Rally Acropolis over in Greece. And we saw a dramatic stage 10 today that saw Thierry Neuville, who was leading, go out with suspension problems. Tough break for him. He was going for his 3rd consecutive podium, 4th in the last 5 races, but broke his suspension piece, ruined his day. He even tweeted that was the cause, and he's out of it. So as of stage 11, Sebastian Ogier in Toyota leads his teammate Kyle Rovanpera and Elfyn Evans. So it looks like it's going to be a Toyota 1, 2, 3. Ogier and Neuville, they were essentially the 2 top drivers today. They were exchanging lead back and forth after each stage, the same yesterday. Overall, it looks like Sebastian Ogier might have this wrapped up. Stage 12 is going to be later today. And of course, that will be the final stage today. And then there's only 3 stages left tomorrow. So Ogier, he leads Rovanpera by 12 seconds. And then he's nearly 2 minutes away of 3rd place, Elfyn Evans. So he really needs to have a big screw up where it's go off the track, the delay getting back on the track. It really looks like Ogier is going to get another win, considering he's racing just part-time. His winning percentage is insanely great for what he is doing. Autonic, the other big name, of course, he is 6th, and he is 4 minutes behind. When you're talking about World Rally Championship racing, and we're usually talking about seconds, for somebody to be 4 minutes behind, you essentially need Sebastian Ogier to get really lost, have bad luck. That is not happening. But Isha, we got to talk about NASCAR, where we know it just seems like bad luck is just one corner away.
Yeah, Joe. Moving on to NASCAR now. The second race of the NASCAR Cup Series Playoffs is at Kansas Speedway. This is one of the more revered tracks on the calendar, and it's one that Denny Hamlin has circled. So if we look at some of the past winners, Denny Hamlin won earlier this year after putting Kyle Larson in the wall, and Bubba Wallace won here last year. We also know that Bubba is only 1 point below the outline. So, Joe, do you think that Bubba is in a must-win situation, and would Denny settle for a second place behind Wallace or Tyler Reddick?
Bubba, if I was that team, I would be coming in with the mindset, let's go out there, get the win. This is our best opportunity to get the win. But don't pressure yourself and thinking this is a must-win. If you were to go out there, get stage points, get a top 10 finish, you'll be in a much better position rather than just being 1 point below the cut line. When it comes to Bristol, you do have a good car there, traditionally Toyota. I think Bubba could bring it home, but a win will just ensure they're locked into the next round, and that'll be huge for 23XI to have a car in the next round. In the Drivers' Championship, they got in the last year in the Owners' Championship for that 45 team. For Tyler Reddick, he has never made it out of the first round. He would love to get out of the first round for the first time in his career. So for Denny Hamlin, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the later stages of this race. If Denny Hamlin's running behind the 2 of them with a handful of laps to go, he's in a pretty comfortable spot. But as you saw in the points, he's just one bad race away from having to be put near the cut line. I would not want to think what Denny Hamlin would do. I think he would try to still go for the win, at least get second place. But it's going to be really hard to see what happens. The big thing, the stage points, that's going to play a factor. If Danny wants to get last stage points, he could settle for maybe second place, ensuring Bubba or Tyler advances to that next round.
Yep, and last week's winner, Kyle Larson, we know that he wants to make it 2 in a row. He already is locked into the next round, so he won't be under any pressure during the next 2 races. But Joe, how do you think Kyle Larson could play a spoiler for everyone in the playoffs if he wins?
Kyle Larson could be the ultimate spoiler for Denny Hamlin. If Denny Hamlin is leading the race with a handful of laps to go, and Kyle Larson's in second place and faster, he's going to be thinking about what happened the last time we were in Kansas when Denny Hamlin put Kyle Larson on the wall on the last lap before the win. Denny Hamlin's going to not want to see Kyle Larson near him if he's leading the race and we're coming to the end of the race. For Kyle Larson, he'll love to go out there, get that win, and especially you look at the points how William Byron, his teammates up there. If you notice, really, no Chevrolets are towards the bottom. You want to ensure that some of the best drivers that you feel are your biggest opponents for the championship struggle to make it out the next round. So I'll be looking at Christopher Bell. If you could block Christopher Bell from getting a win, and Christopher Bell is still in the cut line entering Bristol, he's going to have a much harder time, and then he'll be behind essentially for the rest of the playoffs. Can you imagine if Kyle Larson wants to do what we saw Joey Logano did to Matt Kenseth in 2015? What Matt Kenseth went through, he needed to get a win. Joey Logano already had a win, but Logano spun him, still got the win. Matt Kenseth tried again at Talladega, but it didn't work out. He was eliminated. If Kyle Larson could eliminate a driver like Christopher Bell, Joey Logano, even Ross Chastain, because we know those two are not exactly the best of buddies, he would love to do that. And if he could do that by getting a win, preventing them from locking themselves in the next round, that would be huge for Kyle Larson, the team there, and a big blow to whoever is now in a must-win situation at Bristol.
Yeah, Joe, you're absolutely right. And we know that this weekend is tricky because Kansas is a tough track and nobody can afford a bad race here. And any 15 of the remaining playoff drivers can find themselves near the outline with a bad race. And then obviously with Bristol next week, it gets more challenging. So who do you think out of the drivers has the most to gain and who has the most to lose this weekend?
The most to gain has to be the Toyota drivers. They have been traditionally fast at this race, and especially Christopher Bell. He has to go out there and just have a solid, good run. Try to get himself some stage points, because if he gets 2 stage wins, 20 points, he's in a much better position already. So to Toyotas, I think they're the big drivers to look at. But also, I'm looking at Ricky Stenhouse too. He had a 12th place finish. He'll love to have another top 15 finish, because look, he's only 4 points below the cut line. If Kevin Harvick has a bad race, if Bubba Wallace has a bad race, if 3 drivers ahead of him, Christopher Bell, Wallace, and Harvick have bad races, he could be above the cut line entering Bristol, a short track where you'll feel really good about. Some of the drivers I think that have the most to lose, again, I mentioned Christopher Bell. He had the most to gain. He has the most to lose. He cannot have another bad race, put himself in a must-win situation again. He did this at the Roval. He did this at Martinsville. He cannot do this again for a third time. I don't think 3 times will be the charm. I think he'll go out if he puts himself in a bad spot. Michael McDowell, this is really his best opportunity to try to just salvage points. He's only 19 points below the cut line. If he could get some stage points and a good finish, he could reduce that gap. But if he doesn't reduce that gap, he puts himself in a must-win situation at Bristol, and I don't have the confidence in that team. And Chris Buescher, RFK Racing, the effort they have been doing this year, this is a race where we've known for most of the year, it seems Ford has struggled on the 1.5-mile ovals. If they could come out here with a good race, be solidly in the top 8, they're feeling really good about Bristol. But if the Ford Gremlins come back and we don't see them and they lose points, they miss out on the stage points, they miss out on a good finish, Brad Keselowski could be in trouble by the time we get into Bristol. And Bristol, the short track, is not as unpredictable as Talladega or Daytona, but you're just one bumper away from being pushed out of the way and your race is ruined.
That's right, Joe. And, later today, we have qualifying coming up. And if we look at what happened last time, there were 7 drivers who started in the top 10 and finished in the top 10. And you mentioned about how Ricky Stenhouse came from 33rd to 12th place. And there's only been 3 times that a driver who started outside the top 20 won. And the first time that happened was Tony Stewart back in 2006. The second time was Brad Keselowski in 2011. And then the most recent time was Denny Hamlin in 2019. So, Joe, in your opinion, could a team starting outside the top 20 win at Kansas?
I'm going to say no. If you're starting outside the top 20, you have a big road ahead to get towards the front. We know this track is going to be one of the hardest tracks to race on. Handling always seems to be a big issue. We've seen drivers lose control. If you couldn't get your car in good shape for qualifying and you're 20th, you got a lot of work in that first stage to try to get your car better and better. What Ricky Stenhouse did was just an amazing effort from 33rd to 12th. But I can tell you, it wasn't because they just had a poor qualifying lap and then they had a fast car. They worked on that car pit stop after pit stop, just gaining positions. If you're outside the top 20, that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be just working on trying to get that car right, try to stay on the lead lap. If you're a playoff driver and you fall below 20th, you're in trouble. You're going to have a heck of an effort to try to get just in the top 20. I mean, Ricky Stenhouse from 33rd to 12th, that's a great effort. If somebody was to go as far back as 30th or worse, they're going to be celebrating to get in the top 10. But I think one of the big things, and especially if it's a playoff driver, they're going to be missing out on those stage points. Because without those stage points, if you advance in the next round, you're going to be at a deficit, bigger deficit than the drivers that score stage points tomorrow in the race. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. But I think you have to be in the top 20 at Kansas starting.
Absolutely, Joe. And now that we're done with NASCAR, it is time to move on to our favorite segment of the game. It's pick a winner time. So there's two races that we'll be choosing pick a winners for, as there's no Formula One this weekend. Joe, let's start with IndyCar. Who is your pick a winner?
For my pick a winner, I'm going to go with Will Power. I feel he had that mess up yesterday. I think he's going to be better driver to adjust his driver style and get the hang of the car. And I think he's going to get the pole. My prediction, Will Power from pole will get the win.
All right, for mine, I'm going to go with a different driver. I'm going to say Colton Herta. And now passing it right back to you, Joe. What about for NASCAR?
NASCAR, this is going to be a hard one too. I think I'm going to go with Bubba Wallace. He won here last year. That team has to be feeling pretty good about their chances again. Bubba Wallace is my pick.
That's exactly what I was thinking too, Joe. I've got Bubba Wallace for my pick as well.
And in the chat room, Adam Lemery's, Colton Herta, Pecco Bagnaia for MotoGP, and Kansas Martin Truex Jr. So definitely encourage everyone to comment with your picks for pick a winner. And of course, if you don't catch us live, you can always comment in the comments room or through social media, TikTok, Instagram. We're always there. We post our pick winner each and every week, so be sure to follow us. And big thank you to everyone that's invested in the Grid Network, whether it's through Buy Me a Coffee, Super Chat, or our Patreon investors, including Matthew, our newest one. A big thank you to him. We encourage everyone to subscribe and hit the bell icon. That's the simplest, easiest way to support us here at the Grid Network, support the team. And we'll be continuing our motorsports coverage tomorrow with Grid Live Wrap-Up. For Isha Azim from Racing with Isha, I'm Joe Samaniego. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time and enjoy the races. Thank you for watching us right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and check out some of our other videos, including Life on the Grid, where we interview folks from the motorsports industry. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.